kill me? You might as well kill me.
I'm your retainer. I follow a code. I've always given you my respect.
So that's why you got that big fucking gun to my head?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Movie Club, a co-presentation of Movie Patron and Film Junk. My name is Sean, and we've got an interesting little experiment here for you guys today. Maybe we can all go around the table and just introduce ourselves. I'm Sean from FilmJunk.com.
I'm Jay from Film Junk as well.
I am Andrew. I'm from MoviePatron.com.
And Kurt from MoviePatron/Twitch.
And I think I'm the only guy that is stateside as well in this conversation, too.
Yes, it's interesting how that worked out that way. But yeah, so Jay and I are actually in St. Catharines, Kurt in Toronto, and Andrew, you're in
I'm in Minneapolis. Minnesota. Yep.
So yeah, it's kind of cool. We're doing this currently over Skype, so you'll have to forgive us if some of the audio quality isn't the greatest. But so here's the idea. We're going to try and get together once a month with sort of a rotating cast of movie bloggers, podcasters, what have you. And we're going to discuss a couple of older films. Sort of the idea is kind of like a book club thing, but with movies. And so this week we're discussing Jim Jarmusch's Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai, and also Todd Field's Little Children. So I guess, what do you guys want to start with?
We can start with the Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai. I have to admit that it's been a while since I've seen that movie, but it's still stuck in my brain pretty well. I mean, Jim Jarmusch is pretty, what's the word, I guess? Kind of an iconoclast. And you know, Forrest Whitaker, this was like one of the first movies it just stuck with me, and his abilities as an actor, really, that's where it really came out for me.
I was going to say, like, one of the first things that struck me, because after you guys suggested this movie, it's kind of one of those movies that I had been meaning to watch for years and had never seen. I've only seen a couple of Jarmusch's movies, but when I picked it up, I totally had forgotten that Forrest Whitaker was the main guy in the movie, and it was kind of interesting because, you know, he's, you know, after doing The Last King of Scotland, he's kind of a big deal now. And going back and watching this movie, I thought was pretty interesting because I thought he was great in the movie. But Kurt, this was kind of your suggestion.
And I suggested it completely blind. I'm like you. I was coming in. I've seen a few of Jarmusch's films. I was coming in from, this movie's been sitting in my movie for years, despite the fact that I'm a huge Forrest Whitaker fan, but oddly enough haven't seen Last King of Scotland. And I suggested it as a way of, finally sitting down and watching the movie and, seeing what other people had to say about it.
Well, I guess also maybe worth mentioning, the point of this isn't necessarily just to review the movie, right? I mean, we're kind of, I guess, just digging into it and kind of just talking about things we liked, things we didn't like, and just sort of contextualizing it, I guess. Is that the idea here?
You got it from my end. Reviewing the film is not really what I want. I would just want to talk about, what you like or dislike or what catches you rather than, although if there's some sort of film cultural tidbits or whatever that people want to
Right. So, in the future, when we do something like this, we'll let listeners know what types or what titles exactly that we'll be talking about. So I mean, it might get a little bit spoilerific along the way here because, like you said, we're going to really be digging into it and maybe particular scenes, particular things that we liked or didn't like about it. And so this will be sort of our first episode, I guess, where we don't, the listener doesn't have a heads up beforehand about what we're going to be talking about but in the future, it shouldn't be a problem as far as spoilers go. You should be able to actually know way in advance and even watch the movie yourself if you haven't seen it and sort of be part of the discussion almost.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this movie is, 6 years old now or something? Or
right.
More than that?
99.
Right. So I guess it's safe to say if we're not spoiling any new stuff here. So maybe we might dig into things a little bit. So if you haven't seen the movie, be warned. But I'll start by pointing out one thing that I felt about this film. I had seen it previously, but I rewatched it, and I had actually forgotten how just completely cool the movie is. It's got these title cards that come up throughout the film that have these quotes from I guess it's kind of like the Way of the Samurai, and what I loved about it is Forrest Whitaker's character is completely into this Japanese culture. He lives the life of a samurai, but he's a black man, and he still has his own culture. Like throughout the film, he listens to hip hop, and you've got as far as the soundtrack, the perfect representation of that samurai culture clashing with hip hop with a soundtrack produced by the RZA, who after this went on to do the soundtrack for the Kill Bill movies.
Well, I think it's interesting too because he was in the Wu-Tang Clan, and that group alone kind of embodies sort of what this movie is about, which is kind of the whole like East meets West kind of thing,
right?
With a whole urban kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the movie, he even not only does he like listen to hip hop, but he's got the cornrow hairdo and he's got the hoodie. I mean, he sort of dresses like a typical street thug kind of.
Yeah. It even brings in the mob culture. Like it is a great fusion of many different cultures into a real stew in the movie.
Yeah, I really liked the mob stuff because it was played so cartoony. I mean, you literally have mobsters watching cartoons throughout the entire movie, and all the clips of the cartoons they're watching have some sort of relevance to what's going on in the film. And some of the funniest scenes come out of the mob scenes. And it's just, these mobsters sitting at a table discussing, like there's one scene in particular where they're trying to figure out where Ghost Dog got his name from. And, just their ignorance, I guess, towards other cultures in a way, but also oddly their respect and knowledge for the hip hop culture, which may not be entirely realistic, but is a pretty funny moment.
Meaning the one gangster that knows his public enemy very well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I guess throughout Jarmusch's films, there's kind of that similar theme of breaking down some sort of barrier. I mean, I recently reviewed Night on Earth for Film Junk, and it was the first time I'd seen it, and the premise of that film is it's 4 short stories all set in a taxi cab around the world. And every one of those stories has some sort of barrier being broken. You've got, a class barrier. There's one where there's a black man who's trying to get to the Bronx, and he's picked up by a Russian cabbie, played by what's his name? He was in Eastern Promises. He was the main Russian mobster, the father. Sorry, what was it?
Armin Mueller-Stahl.
Yeah. And he's awesome in it. And it totally reminded me of Ghost Dog because it's just this, Even as far as language barrier, you've got another awesome character in this movie, which is Ghost Dog's best friend, who is the man who works at the ice cream truck who speaks French.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that character is played off in the movie, too, because it's like he's saying all this stuff, and, of course, watching it, you can read the subtitles and you know what he's saying, but all the other characters apparently can't understand him, but in a way they kind of can, and it's like, it's totally about, just cultures coming together.
I did not have the subtitles on.
Oh, really?
My French is not exactly that strong, although I could catch tidbits here and there. So I was watching it from the point of view that the Haitian ice cream character, I could not understand him. Although in this movie, the body language tells so much of the movie that I think you could watch the movie on mute and get loads out of it. Like you said, the gangster expressions and the way even they sit around the table or they posture, and certainly Forrest Whitaker, it's a very body language performance, and even the ice cream vendor, you could get a lot just from his body language, which I pretty much had to because I didn't have the subtitles on. I wasn't sure whether the subtitles were supposed to be there or not.
I don't know, because
I didn't want to cheat, and I don't know because I never caught the film theatrically whether they subtitled that character or not.
I think in my copy that I saw, I'm pretty sure that the subtitles were there, and I just thought it was a fascinating relationship because, like you said, nobody can understand this guy, yet they seem to be just having a conversation back and forth, and if I remember correctly, they're even almost sort of having two different conversations with each other. One guy's talking about one thing, and Ghost Dog is talking about another thing, yet somehow they sort of form a rapport of some kind. And, I just remember that being really interesting as well.
I don't know if this is, like, completely crazy or just in my own head, but watching the movie, I was reminded of Rocky. It just reminded me of in the first Rocky, the early scenes when he's still he's a kind of a hitman, not a hitman, but a collector for a loan shark, and it's just Rocky who's this kind of intimidating guy, but he has a soft side to him, and he has his neighborhood, and he's interacting with like the young Marie character, and he has his friends throughout the neighborhood. And it almost reminded me if Rocky had, rather than getting into boxing, gotten into, samurai books and ended up killing mobsters.
Yeah, I can see the parallel there.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I thought, like the whole urban thing. And I mean, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong here, but Jim Jarmusch, does he do all his movies in New York City? Is that right? Or is it...
Well, Dead Man is definitely not in New York City.
Okay. Because, like, I don't know if... Like, I'm assuming that's where this was set. I don't know for sure. But...
if you notice in the movie, the license plates don't actually have... on them. It just says the highway state and, like...
The industrial state, I think it was.
But I think it's supposed to be... It looks a lot like Baltimore, too. Maybe. Not like I was watching The Wire.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to bring up, actually, was the license plate. And I was wondering, like, because I don't know, for me, it's like I think of New York City, but then it's like he was purposely trying to make it not New York City or trying to make it anywhere. Like, I don't know. I don't even know where it was shot necessarily, but I believe that's where he's from, is it not?
New York?
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably.
Well, I can just IMDb him right now.
Oh, that's perfect.
Sure. I mean, I think the only Jarmusch I've only seen a couple. Like I've seen Broken Flowers, and that sort of travels all around with.
True. Yeah.
The Bill Murray one, and then the other one that I've seen is Coffee and Cigarettes.
Right.
I think that although it's all taking place indoors, I do get the sense that it's in some kind of city and urban, like it does feel so it's possible that he's got a real, not quite a Woody Allen
Yeah, it says here in his mini biography, it says he came to New York City from Akron, Ohio, and I guess he went to Columbia and NYU film school. So I'm assuming he's just stayed there, but
one thing I've always felt in his movies is they play like anthology films even when they're not literally anthology films, like Coffee and Cigarettes or Night on Earth. It feels like Broken Flowers specifically feels like a series of stories that are, connected by Bill Murray going on this journey. And Ghost Dog, I don't know if I felt that entirely with this movie, but there was specific breaks with the fades to black that suggest
Titles.
Yeah, and the titles that suggest
almost like chapters.
Yeah. And I liked how the titles sort of related to the end of each chapter. The one specifically about mentioning the samurai keeping rouge up his sleeve in case he needs to change his appearance or something. And at that moment, he's switching the license plates on the car.
Right. I mean, each one of them is like, like an author in a novel will put another author's quote on each chapter, almost as if to give you a flavor of what that chapter is going to accomplish. And I love any movie that uses intertitles, and this one in particular with not only are they intertitles, but they're intertitles where the actor is narrating them. So you're kind of reading them yourself, but you're also getting the character narrating them. And when the torch is sort of passed at the end of the film, with the little girl that he talks to all the time, you notice she reads the last title card, right?
Right. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Almost like you've just seen rather than the story of Ghost Dog, you've just seen the story of this girl. You see Ghost Dog being beaten by thugs and rescued by that mobster as his sort of background story, and it's like this entire movie was a background story to whatever that little girl is going to end up doing.
And on the RZA note, I don't know a lot. I know they've scored a lot, or he's scored a number of films, but the three that immediately come to mind all have that element in it. It may just be coincidence, but Kill Bill, of course, the opening chapter in Volume 1 has the Uma Thurman setting up the little girl by letting her live and say, come back and find me in 20 years or whatever if you want revenge. And then they also did the Japanese animated crossed over, fused with urban culture, the Afro Samurai, which that's the whole animated series is this sort of cycle of the next one coming up and avenging, filling the shoes of or whatever of the first one. It's just a weird coincidence, but you're right. It's almost like the whole film is just a prequel to what could be another story.
Mm-hmm. One thing I really like about Jarmusch is his humor as well, which I know I had mentioned with the mobsters, but even beyond the mobsters, like almost the samurai stuff, I guess juxtaposed with the mobsters, it's like Forrest Whitaker's character is very graceful and constantly meditating and laying with his pigeons, and then you cut to the mobsters who are old, and for me it was funny because you've got these old guys running around with sawed-off shotguns, and there's the one character actor, I don't know his name, but he's got a really kind of throaty voice that it sounds like he's had cancer or something, and he's been in other mob movies, and it's just humorous because these are the bad guys, these people who are like haven't let go of this organization that's basically past its prime, I guess. And when you're comparing it to Forrest Whitaker's daily routine and how he lives his life, it's almost ridiculous watching these old men go to these rooftops looking for the black man with the pigeons and accidentally shooting someone who is obviously not the same guy.
Yeah, they're.
Have any of you guys seen Fishing with John.
I want to see it. Huge on my list. That's the collection of short stories of him literally just taking people out fishing.
Yeah, it's John Lurie, who is in Down by Law and Stranger Than Paradise, and it's him taking his actor buddies out fishing, and there's one with Tom Waits and Willem Dafoe, and there's the first episode is with Jim Jarmusch, and that show is probably one of the funniest shows I've ever seen, and the episode with Jarmusch specifically is hilarious, and you can see he's got this really, like, his voice is really monotone, and he's got this dry sense of humor, and it totally comes through in his films. There's a documentary that he kind of hosts called Tigrero, where he goes to this, I think it's a country in South America, with Samuel Fuller to visit this old tribe that Fuller was shooting a movie called Tigrero in the 50s that got canned, and him and Samuel Fuller together are like just this weird comedic team. With
Fuller is anything but ironic and laid back. Fuller is like very earnest and in your face.
Yeah, and he's
just the opposite.
He's chomping on a cigar the whole time, and he's
right.
It's just really funny. So I'd recommend checking that out, definitely. But it's you can see, even though his humor is very subtle, it's definitely there, and especially in this movie.
It's interesting that you mentioned those two things, because they play into Jarmusch's themes of crossing cultures that are not normally crossed and don't mesh very well. Both the fishing and with Sam Fuller, their personalities that don't seem like they should fit, and sort of that's part of the fun of watching Ghost Dog, is that you've got the rap culture, you've got the mob culture, you've got a lot of other characters that are, their own little worlds. Even the little girl in the film is, sort of the domestic world, as close as you can get to domestic in a Jarmusch film. But it's fun to just watch them sort of bounce off one another and mix in various different and interesting ways. And the cartoon element in the movie, you brought it up earlier, that's one thing that I found really fascinating, is not only do the cartoons, like the titles, sort of give a flavor of what that scene is, but did you notice that the cartoons seem to be advancing?
In chronology?
Yeah, and if you... Another thing that the movie goes over again and again is, cultures die, and you have to let cultures go, which is sort of the opposite of all the characters in the movie, because Forrest Whitaker is living by a 300-year more or less gone culture, and the mobsters are aging and fading away, and I echoed that, as it started out with like Betty Boop and it ended up with Itchy and Scratchy.
Yeah.
One thing sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, one thing I was just going to mention was, there's the whole samurai undertones, and the one thing I really loved was the big showdown at the end, where it's like master versus student, and the way that it kind of worked out, because obviously the guy, the mobster guy that is sort of the master isn't really his master, but somehow or other the relationship kind of came about. And I don't know, was there I don't know a ton about samurai movies, but were there any sort of hidden references to things in there that you guys noticed? Or
well, the most overt thing is, and this is the brilliance of how Ghost Dog plays on that level. The brilliance of it is that far more like a Wild West showdown. And then if you look at over the years with the Italian spaghetti westerns and then westerns remaking samurai films and samurai films remaking westerns, there is your ultimate example of cultural appropriation. Right now there's a Takashi Miike film called sukiyaki Western Django, which the whole point of that movie is to watch a samurai film which is appropriating from a Western, which is appropriating from an Italian Western, which is appropriating from an American Western, which originally was appropriating from a Japanese samurai film. So it's this weird circle of everything coming back around. And so playing that, they explicitly reference when he shows down his master, that scene, they explicitly reference High Noon to really draw attention to the fact that it's far more like a Western than a samurai film. But again, in cinema, and obviously Jarmusch is a film student as much as he is a filmmaker, the Western and the samurai film are so mashed together already that you can't really untangle them anymore.
I was going to say, that's actually a slight beef I remember that I had with the movie. Going into it, I was sort of expecting a little bit more of the samurai, and I guess the samurai physical abilities. The culture is obviously there, and his lifestyle and ideals and how he looks at life. But I think, in the poster, I think he's holding a sword or something, a samurai sword. And I remember in the film, correct me if I'm wrong, he very rarely uses a sword. It's mostly gunplay. The sort of Western.
Yeah, that's
gunshot. And I remember kind of being a little miffed about that because I was going in expecting this urban guy who takes revenge or kills people, whatever, using swords, and it ends up being he's just sort of like any other hitman. However, he does sort of use his guns. The way he moves and stuff is sort of like a samurai, like he holds it behind his head and then smoothly brings it around. Does that, I don't know, did that bother anybody else? Like, there just wasn't much of the samurai action that I thought was going to be there a little bit.
I did think the same thing at first, but it's kind of weird because, I don't know, thinking about it now in my head to actually have him, wasn't there a scene with him on the rooftop where he was kind of doing training with a sword or something?
Yeah, for me, I kind of liked that he didn't use a sword. I thought I liked how his ideals were based in samurai, but his actions were based in, I guess, modern.
More modern, yeah.
I was going to say based in hip hop, but that would mean that I'm saying that all hip hop lovers kill with guns. But you know what I mean.
Well, for me, going into Ghost Dog, the very fact that you just did not know at any point where this movie was going to go, it is so unpredictable in its visual cues. It's unpredictable, like you said. It's called Way of the Samurai, and he doesn't really literally fight with a samurai sword. He trains with it in one scene, but I found that to be the chief pleasure of Ghost. You just sort of have to sit back. It's not a very fast-paced film. It really goes at a slow pace. There's even parts of the movie where, the movie's quite simply boring. It's like it's daring you to just keep watching it. And I love movies like that. I just love movies that say, look, here's the pace with which we're going to go. We're not really in a hurry to get anywhere. We're just going to move along and observe these people. And that's what you do. The camera spends a lot of time just looking at Forrest Whitaker, looking at something else.
Well, I remember... Sorry.
Go ahead.
I remember a specific moment where I consciously noticed that, and it was the one of the first scenes where Forrest Whitaker puts a CD... He's driving, he puts a CD in, and it's just him driving, I guess, back into the city, and it sticks with him for the whole thing. And you've got, that dissolves and whatnot. And then from there, you go to the rooftop with him, and it's almost, I guess, maybe like a representation of his meditation, maybe. Like maybe listening to his... That's the other thing. It reminded me of Broken Flowers, where whenever... Bill Murray got into his car, he had that same song that he played on his CD every time. And it's like maybe the music for Forrest Whitaker is a meditation in the same way that, you know, his training with his sword is, because there's a specific attention to him putting a CD in and listening to it. It's not just a audio cue in the background. He's paying direct attention to that, and
each CD that he pops in, of course, he keeps stealing cars over the course of the movie. And each CD that he pops in, this is again on that sort of cultural, or whatever you happen to appropriate, whatever car he steals. Of course, he listens to their CDs. So it's like he steals the woman's Jaguar, and it's like a jazz score. And then, you know, the Mercedes he steals at the beginning has a rap song. You know, I mean, so you get this, you know, he lives in, you know, obviously he has his own code and his own set of principles, but, you know, when he's out prowling around, he is making these sort of baby steps. I mean, even when he speaks with the, you know, with the ice cream guy, with the little girl, I mean, even his, you know, his relationship with the mobster, he makes these baby steps in, you know, outside of his world, even though he remains rooted in it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys, I didn't think we would do any sort of rating or anything because we're not reviewing this, but I mean, do you want to do like an overall kind of just summary of what we thought of the film?
Well, we can go around the table if you want.
Sure.
Yeah, for me, you know, as I said in the beginning, it's my own fault, but I haven't seen it in a couple of years. I just didn't have enough time to catch it before we started talking. I'll probably be in the minority where I would say I didn't love it. I liked it quite a bit, but I remember, well, like I said, there just maybe it was a little bit of the expectation there. I didn't see the whole samurai thing that I thought I would at the beginning. I loved I loved a lot of the interaction and relationships between Ghost Dog and the various characters. And then I also, like Kurt just said, there are parts that are slow and downright, you know, in a couple parts actually a little bit boring. And so, you know, I don't know, like I guess I wouldn't give it a rating just because I haven't seen it, but I thought it was pretty good. I would definitely, but that would probably be it. I would watch it one more time, and so there you go. That's my overall thought on it. Kurt?
Okay. Ghost Dog for me, having just watched it yesterday for the first time, I could already see myself coming back to this movie again and again and again, because it's one of these ultimate hanging out movies. It's not about the plot. There's a lot of character stuff, but it's not really about the characters. I think a lot of Jarmusch's films are just about maintaining a certain vibe or a certain mood, and I love the mood right from the opening shot when it follows the pigeon, and then it shows it from the bird's eye point of view, and then it shows the pigeon, and it takes a good 4 minutes with that great RZA sort of fusion of hip hop and like Japanese flutes or something, and it just way to the main character. And any movie that takes its kind of time, I can handle the slow spots because I'm just into the texture of the movie, and I think there's lots of fun. Ultimately, it is quite a fun movie when you watch it, but maybe the first time is a more intense experience because you really don't know where anyone is going to go in this movie. It's very unpredictable, and I like that about it.
Sean?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. This was my first time watching it, and first impression, there were moments where it was a little slow, and I'm kind of wondering, okay, what's this building to, but looking back on it and having had this conversation, I mean, there's so much that's just interesting and cool about this movie, and I think it definitely plays a little bit more to, obviously like an art house crowd sort of thing. And if you don't know who Jim Jarmusch is, then maybe this isn't your kind of movie. But it's not a straight up comedy, but it has some definite funny moments, and it's really kind of unlike anything I've ever seen before. So other than Broken Flowers and movies like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I check it out if you can, for sure.
And I will agree as well. I do like the hanging out aspect of it. And again, I'll go back to Rocky. Not that it's an exact comparison, but I get the same feeling watching this as I did watching the first Rocky film, that I enjoyed just sitting back and watching him walk around his neighborhood and interact with people. And it wasn't as far as Ghost Dog, it wasn't the action sequences, which I wouldn't really call them action sequences, but it was that I enjoyed, and just the cool feel of it, like the soundtrack and the whole sort of respect among the characters, this sort of over the top respect for their traditions and respect for each other, even when they're kind of killing each other. But I enjoyed it a lot, and it was my second time watching it. I actually liked it better the second time. So,
see, I bet I'm going to like it a little bit better the second time, too. Especially after having, like Sean said, after having this conversation, there'll be a little bit more to notice and chew on, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
These types of movies always play, like that style, the hanging out type of movie, they play better and better each time, because it's like you're coming back to, friends, or just
right.
to hang out with them again. So.
Yeah, well, I've watched Death Proof on DVD 3 times now, and it's gotten better every time. So,
yeah, no disagreement here.
The ultimate hangout movie.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Little Children is the second movie we're talking about here today. Obviously, a little bit of a newer film. Directed by Todd Field and based on a novel. Who wrote the novel? Do you guys know? Is it
Tom Perrotta?
Tom Perrotta, yeah.
Yeah, the guy who wrote the Election, which was also turned into a film.
Right. Okay. So I guess I'm not quite sure where to start with this one, but I did just watch it a couple days ago for the first time myself.
Really?
So
Okay.
Yep.
I saw it in the theater. I was when it came out. I actually went to the theater by myself because I couldn't convince anybody to go see it with me. So, and then I watched it a couple times on DVD. I think the last time I watched it was like maybe 2 weeks ago. Actually, I ended up purchasing it and said, "All right, I'm going to watch it again." So I've seen it like 3 times and just watched it again a couple weeks ago.
And myself. Oh, go ahead.
No, you first.
Okay. I actually spontaneously walked into it for its big premiere, and I was supposed to go see another film, which I couldn't make it to, so I just I'm not a big fan of In the Bedroom. I don't hate the movie, I just feel that it has a lot of problems. But I went sort of randomly into Little Children, and it ended up being one of my favorite films at that year's Toronto Film Festival, which I then managed to catch in the theater when it played, and then I have bought the DVD. So it's been several months since I've seen it, whenever the DVD was released, but I've seen it several times.
And I am also a latecomer to that movie. I saw it for the first time 2 months ago when I bought it, and I've watched it 3 times since then. And you'll be glad to know that I bought it after listening to your show. The second that I heard you guys say that it was written by Tom Perrotta, I had to check it out. But
well, maybe we can. I think when you talked about it on the Film Junk podcast a while ago, you kind of mentioned this to preface your review of it, and maybe you guys can say what you think about this, but this movie was marketed very strangely. Like for me, when I first heard about it, I didn't really know what kind of movie it was, and I had heard some reviews saying it was a dark comedy, and that's kind of what got me interested in it. But you look at the DVD cover or the movie poster, and you know who's in it, and it kind of seems like just a romance drama. You're not really sure, but there's some pretty wicked dark humor in this.
Well, the trailer, I love the trailer, and we'd seen the trailer a long time ago, and I liked the trailer a lot. I thought it was effective, but after seeing it, I thought the trailer totally mismatched the tone. Because, you know, I watched the trailer after hearing you guys talk about it. I was like, oh yeah, that movie. I looked at the trailer and I'm thinking, I don't see the Tom Perrotta in this, because it's it almost at some point in the trailer feels like a thriller, because you see the main character running down the street and, you know, you're hearing the train whistle, and it's very ominous. It almost reminded me of like The Shining or something, but the humor isn't in the trailer.
I know that when I first saw the trailer, I immediately said there will not be a trailer to come out this year that tops that for pure intensity. It's just a great... It starts from a stark image and it builds its way up to that thundering train rushing by. What doesn't quite capture the tone of the film. I mean, that trailer, it excited me that, you know, because it was gripping. But, yeah, Todd Field, the director, describes the movie as a satirical melodrama, which, if that is a genre, it's a very, very small genre. Maybe you could shoehorn something like Magnolia in, but not really. Yeah, I guess it feels like other Tom Perrotta adapted. It does feel a bit like Election, and actually, Alexander Payne, who directed Election, a number of his films are about the closest equivalent to the vibe that's going on in this movie.
Actually, it kind of felt for me like a light version of Todd Solondz. I had the same reaction to a lot of the stuff that was going on in the film that I have to Todd Solondz, in that I was laughing at things that are very dark, I guess, but also the uneasiness. Like there's some moments in Little Children that are very uneasy, I guess, but not quite at the level of Solondz. Not as cynical, even though Tom Perrotta is seemingly one of the most cynical people on the face of the earth. I think Todd Solondz still has him beat, but definitely, I think if you like happiness, you're gonna like this. You're not gonna get the same level of intensity. Well, maybe the same level, just a different intensity, I guess.
One of those moments that you mentioned in there actually has the same actress almost playing the same character, Jane Seymour.
Yeah, and I laughed when she came up because
in The Brave One, in a very minor role. Actually, I've seen her publicly plays the blind date to the pedophile character, the Bad News Bears guy. His name is escaping me right now. And yeah, she played the same role, or a very similar role, in Todd Solondz's Happiness. Yes, absolutely.
And yeah, I remember that shot when he's going to his date, and then it cuts to a shot of him sitting at, you know, the restaurant dinner table, and you can only see her back. And I knew right away. I was like, don't tell me that this is the same person. And as soon as it cut to her, I laughed, and I knew exactly what was going to happen, because she gets shit on so bad in Happiness throughout that whole movie. And I'm like, this is perfect. Like, it could have been a crossover, you know, from this exact same character, but I was very happy to see her in there.
It's a little bit of meta foreshadowing. If you're aware of this other film,
yeah,
you know what's coming.
Well, I'm in agreement with you on the marketing. Like, I remember when I walked out of the theater, besides being blown away and loving the movie, I was really angry that I had just seen this amazing movie in just like a rep cinema, and nobody was there. I'd never seen, other than the trailer online, I don't really remember seeing the trailer anywhere else. And I just remember thinking, well, no, this is Todd Field, who was nominated, at least in the bedroom, you know, it was up for Best Picture. I don't know if his directing was. It's Kate Winslet, you know, who's constantly nominated. The studio should be pushing this.
Well, it kind of it reminded me a little bit of American Beauty as well. And I mean, that movie certainly reached the masses, and I don't see why this one couldn't have. But
yeah, I think this is sort of an American Beauty. I mean, it's a lot. it's more, I don't dreamlike, but it's definitely more like a story, like a fairy tale kind of version of American Beauty. But yeah, it runs a lot of parallels, I think, with that movie.
Melodrama as a film technique is pretty much dead. Again, the only big melodrama I've seen recently, like an honest melodrama, not a soapy melodrama, but is Magnolia. And satire never sells. Satire has got to be the least profitable venture to get into if you're making it. You're ruling out most of the audience that don't key into satire. So a satirical melodrama, you've just funneled it down to a very limited audience. I think the studio realized that this wasn't a movie that they could sell to everyone, and they basically just more or less dumped it. It really didn't open very high, expanded. And even though it got a few nominations and various, the umpteen billion award things that happened between Christmas and March, but yeah, I don't know, did this movie get discovered on DVD? Like, obviously all of us have watched it several times, and we all like the film, but I don't think this movie got any traction, and because of the way the story is told.
Well, I don't think it came here. I'm pretty sure it didn't. And we, in St. Catharines, we get a very select amount of films here, and occasionally we'll get something that's in maybe a limited release that goes a little bit wider, but I don't think this ever came here. So for us, it was a DVD discovery, I guess.
I wonder how well it's been selling. This is not too great. I mean, I'm sure the Oscar nominations helped it along a little bit, but I doubt many people. A lot of people who walk around that outer wall of Blockbuster or whatever, they judge a lot of the movies they see just based on the cover, and the cover isn't all that alluring for everybody.
No, not really. Let me.
The names above the title are
exactly.
Well, yeah.
Emily, Kate Winslet.
That's true.
I just wanted to jump into something like that surprised me kind of right off the bat about this movie, and I guess maybe it shouldn't have if I kind of had known ahead of time that it was Tom Perrotta who wrote it. But the narration in this movie I thought was a really a cool element, and I know like narration can go two ways in movies. Sometimes it's just there to sort of hold things together, and it just gets in the way, but I think a lot of times when you get a movie that's adapted from a book, you need that narration to sort of almost give you a sense of, especially like something where there's, a lot of inner monologue and stuff like that. It really kind of brings a little bit of the book out to the screen for you. And I got that feeling from this. What did you guys think of that?
Yeah, that was one of the things that I really loved about this movie, because this narration is completely different than, say, a Morgan Freeman in Shawshank Redemption or something like this. This guy is, I think you said, like just sort of almost like reading a book. After a character says a line, the narrator will say, "Sarah thought," as she looked over in dismay at the other people at the park or whatever. And just the way he sort of read it, like right out of a novel, and not to mention his tonal qualities, sounds like sort of like a old PBS documentary. And I remember as soon as his voice kicked in, I think within the first couple minutes of the movie, I just went, wow, that's a great touch.
Yeah, I gotta say I have a thing for narration. I actually like narration, even when I know it's being used to plug holes. Although recently I saw Idiocracy, and the narration in that was too painfully obvious that it was being used to plug holes. But I don't know if that was really at the fault of the filmmaker or because of the problems they had with releasing that film. But in this, the narration reminded me of it was almost like when they have like a sociological study or something, and like it reminded me of this, like the scene in Ghostbusters 2 where Egon is taking Sigourney Weaver and showing her the room with the little kid where they give her a kitten and then they take it away and they read the results, and it reminded me of like as though that like the TV is a one-way glass kind of thing, and there's some like asshole doctor who's like telling us the whole time what's happening to these people, and we're watching them kind of fall apart and turn on each other and whatnot. And I liked it a lot. I mean, maybe it's just his voice, like you said, it's got that PBS documentary feel, and it's like you're watching wild animals betraying each other, or
yeah, that's a great analogy.
Well, I actually believe that the guy they hired, that's his day job, is for the BBC to do these sort of narration voiceover jobs. And they hired him, I believe, specifically to play God in the movie. He is the people are thinking, and it allows you as the audience, and it also really goes into dark places with the satire, because you're treating this movie as a sociology experiment, which it very, very much is. I mean,
well, isn't there even a line at the very beginning of the movie in the narration where it mentions that she's like, I think it uses that word like sociological or something, where she's watching the people in the park, and I'm thinking to myself, like, what is Kate Winslet actually a doctor? Like that's her job or something? Like that was the first thing.
Yeah, when it says she's pretending that rather than being one of those people, that she's actually studying them from afar.
Right.
And
the movie is ultimately about the way people pass judgment, and the first step before you pass judgment on someone is to take yourself outside, so that, especially when you're looking like asshole doctor that's passing judgment. And I think that opening scene with her passing judgment on the other women in the park, it echoes kind of you watching it. And then, of course, when Kate Winslet and Patrick Wilson make their choices and get in their situations, then you start to pass judgment on them. And the movie really plays with how people take snapshots or little things. You see someone, do something across the road, and immediately you've snapped judgment on them. And it really mulls that over, like you said, on several levels, from the narrator point of view, from Kate Winslet's point of view within the movie, and then, of course, you watching the movie and judging it. And that's one of the fascinating aspects of the movie. Not the only one, but one of them.
Well, and another thing that I got from it was, I guess could be literally taken from the title, Little Children, which I think the main reason I picked up on this was Kate Winslet's character. She's, she's likable in it, even though she's despicable in many ways, and but she treats her child horribly. Like, for some reason, she is, she loves this guy, and she's, getting into this weird fantasy relationship, and she seems like a good person that's just making a wrong decision. But then you see her interacting with her kid, and she's completely ignoring the kid. And then you see her and I can't remember, what's the other actor's name from Hard Candy?
Patrick Wilson.
Right. Them, when they're together, they're ignoring the kids. Like they're getting together and they're doing things without even thinking about what that is going on with their children. And it was at that point,
children rather than.
Right, they're acting like children, and then they're ignoring their own children. And then when I was trying to figure out, why is this pedophile here? Like this seems like a weird, heavy-handed thing to throw in here, almost for shock value or something. And I kind of got the idea that the pedophile obviously had some issue when he grew up. He was raped, or I can't even remember if it's touched upon, but obviously there's something that happened in his upbringing that has turned him into what he is. And when I was thinking of their children as they're having this affair, I was thinking, okay, so their kids are going to grow up with some sort of weird, mental issue because their parents were assholes to them, like especially Kate Winslet, because there's that scene where the kid comes up with the thing that she made her when she was with that woman, the picture frame or whatever, and Kate Winslet is in the bathroom looking at herself in the mirror, and she says, just a minute, and she's a complete bitch to her kid, and the kid just puts it on the table and leaves, and it's like she's basically rearing that child into this wrong, like it's like she's creating someone that's going to grow up to have an issue like the molester had. Maybe not that extreme, but maybe he's the extreme representation of what happens when you don't raise someone properly, or there's something in the household that can turn someone easily, whether it's extreme or something as small as your mom having an affair with a man while you're in the other room.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and I mean, it's not even her. Look at her husband too, who is totally, sucked into this online porn thing too, where he's not really. At least they don't show it. He's not really too into the kid's life either.
Right.
On at work all day and then hiding in the office all night. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's definitely part of what Todd Field, or I guess Tom Perrotta in this case, is getting at, is that you're looking at all these so-called grown-ups living their life, but they're, I guess, kind of having a midlife crisis or whatever, and ultimately they just want to get back to a point where they have no responsibilities and can just do whatever the hell they want. But there is an interesting scene towards the end where Kate Winslet is crying and her daughter is actually consoling her, which I thought was kind of interesting.
And there's one weird moment in the movie that I completely misread. I don't know about you guys, but there's a scene where Patrick Wilson is playing the football game, and it's his big game. And then the game ends, and you hear cheering, and he turns and he looks, and Kate Winslet is in the bleachers, jumping up and down and cheering. I read that as him being creeped out that she was there, like she's stalking him or something. I don't know if anyone else read it like that, like she's at that point becoming obsessed. Maybe it's because I think it followed the scene where she was watching him go on vacation with his wife, and she was crying.
Yeah. I think you might be right. He kind of looks up and he just kind of has this weird look on his face, like, holy crap, she's here watching the game. But then it
goes in a different direction.
That scene, he really, all of a sudden, he's into it. And I can't remember, it's after the game and the two of them are talking. I can't remember which one of them suggests that they just throw away their lives and run away together.
Well, I think it's him.
Yeah, that's when they have this little role reversal thing.
You actually watch them both regress. He's regressing back to his football days, and she, in her own way, is regressing back to a cheerleader. And maybe that weird look on Patrick Wilson's face is that he's tacitly aware of that fact for that moment. And then they move on because, they can have, hot teenage making out on the football field after the game, which happens. So, you actually watch them both regress in that scene. I mean,
Sure.
in many scenes, but that scene, it's really in your face.
And he's like, he's skipping classes to watch kids skateboard and thinking about, well, this is what I was doing when I was 18. So there's another aspect of him regressing to childhood.
Before we move off, I wanted to go back for 1 second to the kid thing, because the other way, you guys were saying, the way Kate Winslet was ignoring her kid, and that was vicious. If you look from the pedophile's mom, is the other way. She's, doing everything for him, and that is equally negative. And there's a scene in the movie, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is this great homage to Jaws when he goes and takes a dip in the pool, and the parents go into ultra protective mode. They're so protective that, it's in a hugely public space. what is this guy going to do? But the parents, the fear that overtakes the parents and then rubs off to the kids, the opposite of Kate Winslet, of, you know, like letting her kid play the parent, like consoling her, or, you know, not bringing her kids lunch or whatever, you know, all the ignoring things that she does. I find the other women in the park swing really far the other way, so the movie's targeting them as, you know, if you're hovering over your kid in every possible way, that rubs off on the kid negative. And when Jackie Earle Haley dives in the pool and one or two parents become aware of who he is, you actually get this great wave of fear that the kids don't even understand what's going on, but they feel this fear, and then there's all these shots of these kids crying, and the mothers haven't actually moved forward quite yet. It's this sense where the kids actually gather from it before the action actually happens, and I thought that scene really resonated.
Yeah, that was an awesome scene. I also wanted to, Jay brought up the football scenes already, but I just wanted to say how I loved how they were shot, you know, like just he's so heroic and everything, and just like, you know, something out of like Friday Night Lights or something, maybe, almost, you know, like just so over the top, but so fun to watch too.
One of my favorite scenes is the football scene. But partly because I love the narrator at that point is hilarious. I don't know if it's intentionally hilarious, but it sounds like HBO's, you know, Friday Night Football or whatever it's called, where he all of a sudden he comes on and he says, the Falcons were down 3-0, and the Giants were coming back, and they had one mission. And when the narrator actually has a humorous moment, that was brilliant too.
Now, what did you guys think of this What did you guys think of this in comparison to Election? Like the differences and the similarities?
This is much darker, I think. Like, first of all, I haven't seen Election since college, which was a long time ago. But if I remember, Election was almost like kind of cartoony in a way, whereas this seemed much more dramatic and dark.
For me, Election. Also, one of the things I loved about Election was how it played with the narrator. Because in Election, the narrator keeps switching. You know, different characters narrate themselves. I didn't find Election was one of my favorite films of the year that it came out. It really knocked my socks off. And Little Children had the exact same effect. And I guess the message there is that I should be reading Tom Perrotta's novels, but I thought Little Children had a dark, a much more causticness to it. And make no mistake, Election is far from cotton candy. It's got a pretty dark edge to it, but Alexander Payne seems to have a lighter touch. I found Todd Field made it quite apocalyptic, and because Little Children was post 9/11, and I don't know if the novel was, but I found the film really worked in a lot of 9/11 culture of fear, a lot of elements that have came out from have been amplified after 9/11, and I actually read Little Children as one of the best post 9/11 films to come out. Since then.
Yeah, that's true, especially with the one character who feels like it's his duty to constantly keep watch over the pedophile's house, even though nothing bad's happening.
It reminded me of, have you seen, I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember the name of the movie, but the Wim Wenders movie with the girl from Dawson's Creek?
Oh, yes. I know the movie you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, so do I, and I forget what
it's like called. Land of the Free or something.
Land of Plenty. It's from the Leonard Cohen song.
Right.
Land of Plenty.
He kind of reminded me of the character in that.
Absolutely, yeah, because he just takes, in that film, that's his entire life mission. He's like a one-man unit driving around. But the interesting thing about Little Children was that character, Noah Emmerich, he was almost doing it to compensate for his own failures. I didn't get that in Land of Plenty so much. But in this film, it was like, I failed at this, I failed at that, I failed at that, I'm just going to do this. And this, more than any of the characters, Noah Emmerich is a series of failures lined up. And that's saying something, because this movie's quite aggressive about, taking its characters down a peg.
And that
he actually... go ahead.
I was just going to say that guy plays the best buddy characters ever.
Yeah. And he, when you say his past experiences, he actually had more than just a failure where he actually hurt a child. Or, so when you say he was compensating, it's like he's trying to, just make up for, in his own mind, probably what he had done in the past with... You don't really hear the whole story, but you get the sense that he really hurt a kid by accident, and I think he, that scarred him too.
And I actually recently read what I believe it's Tom Perrotta's first novel called The Wishbones, and this guy must have something with affairs, because that entire book is about a man who is in a wedding band, and he lives with his parents still, and he ends up getting engaged to his on and off high school sweetheart, but then ends up, as they're preparing for the wedding, getting into an affair with someone that he meets at one of his wedding gigs. And the entire book is just detailing this affair. So, with Election, the affair between Matthew Broderick's character and the friend of his wife, and
well, for that matter, the teacher and Tracy Flick.
Yeah. This guy is the master at writing affairs, it seems.
Well,
or one of the masters.
An affair as a platform for so many different things. Like you could write Little Children off of, maybe the trailer missells it a bit as an affair movie, but that is really like, the tip of the iceberg. It just keeps going down with the amount of things. Like, it goes after upscale suburbanites, it goes after the culture of fear, it goes after so many things, and it does it, in such a way that it doesn't feel overstuffed, or they can throw that football scene in there, and it doesn't feel like it pulls you out of the movie. It's just this great little vignette that just, it just spins in with the rest of the things that are going on.
Maybe that's the difference between Little Children and the Todd Solondz films, is thinking of Little Children, I'm trying to think of who isn't despicable in a way. I mean, whether or not they have some sort of, point where they kind of redeem themselves. But the characters in this and Election, a lot of them are pretty despicable, except for the children. The children are the ones that are, the innocent people. In Todd Solondz films, even the children are despicable. I mean, in Welcome to the Dollhouse, you've got Dawn Wiener's little sister that's a brat and, will basically do anything to get her sister in trouble. You've got the kid who threatens to rape her at 3:00, and in storytelling, there's the kid who's constantly saying these strange things to the maid. So Todd Solondz is willing to go that extra step and make his child characters as despicable as the adults.
When you say that, I totally was trying to think of all the different characters in the movie, and the only one that I think that isn't really despicable in any way is the mother, the pedophile's mother, who, like Kurt said, just does everything she can to help her son and just be a good mother.
Well, I found her a little despicable in that she sort of didn't address, it's like she just kind of ignored, the fact that he did what he did. Like she plays it down too much.
And that's what moms do.
Yeah. But there's actually this, before I forget, there's one thing that I was kind of confused with, and in thinking of characters that weren't despicable, there's the friend of Kate Winslet, the older woman who brings her to the book club. Mm-hmm. She wasn't. She was fine. But there's that moment where she's babysitting the kid as Kate Winslet goes on that weekend, And when she comes back, she's, oh, how was she? She was good. She was good. And Kate Winslet offers the money for her service. And the woman has this reaction to it that's completely like she's offended. And she leaves, like basically
complicit, almost.
She storms out. And I didn't entirely, I was trying to figure out, I wonder if the kid mentioned something about mommy being with another man, or if it was just the fact that Kate Winslet offered her money and it made it seem like it was, it was a service rather than a friend helping a friend, or what. I don't know what you guys thought.
I think you're closer with the second aspect. It's like I think she has clued in the reason why she was leaving just from the little bit of dialogue that they had. She can tell that she's not being honest with her, and when the money comes into the equation, it's like Kate Winslet was buying her judgment. And she storms out because her judgment isn't for sale, and she's just insulted that, that Kate Winslet can relieve her guilt in some way, shape, or form by throwing.
Wow, that's not what I took from it at all. I thought that exactly what you had thought, Jay, was that the little girl, had probably mentioned a few things over the weekend, and I think this lady just sort of figured it out. I don't know. I thought it was normal to offer somebody money for taking care of their kid for the weekend, but to me it felt like this lady knew something that was going on and just didn't want to be involved, but you could tell was very disapproving. But
yeah, I got that too, but when I watched it again, the thing that had me questioning maybe the other thing was the fact that her tone seemed to change exactly when the money was offered. Because if it, she's very, when she's asks how she was, she was great, and she, was very happy until the money came into play. But I don't know.
And just before she storms off, she pauses for like something, and then just says goodbye and walks around the corner.
Yeah.
Too. So yeah.
Should we touch upon the book club scene, since we're sort of doing the same thing here? That was the one scene in the movie I hated. I think this movie is a perfect movie, except I found the book club and the fact that the book club is doing Madame Bovary, which obviously is so. That was just too obvious for me, too heavy-handed. And not only is it the book club and the book club doing Madame Bovary, but they have to explicitly, syllable by syllable, word by word, spell it out. For you, of Kate Winslet's character arc and the fact that she sympathizes with Madame Bovary, and then of course you have the other woman that can't fathom why someone would do this, and it was like Kevin's in Chasing Amy. The only scene I hate in Chasing Amy is the scene where Kevin walks in and has to explain the movie to the audience. I find that offensive, and that was the only weakness. And I was just curious as to what your thoughts were on that particular scene in the movie.
Well, I didn't have a problem with it, really. I mean, I see what you're getting at as far as it being obvious and maybe a little heavy-handed. But the one thing that I did like about it was, there's the woman that's the adversary that, is the complete bitch. And she, expresses her hatred for the book and how she just doesn't get it. But I did like how there was the older women that were open-minded and trying to figure out, the reasoning behind it all.
There's some humor there too, where they're talking about the sex and stuff and kind of.
Yeah, and I liked it that it just left it completely up in the air as far as whether or not it was morally wrong for her to be doing what she was doing. Like, it's up to the person watching, I guess. And most people say it is wrong, but you can say, well, if she's unhappy and her husband is sniffing panties while she's downstairs, maybe she's doing the right thing. But I did like how there's the 3 points of view. There's the one that's completely on the one side of thinking it's completely wrong. There's Kate Winslet, who's trying to tell herself it isn't, or maybe come to the realization that it isn't so bad. And then there's the old women who you would expect to be the least open-minded, that are actually, giving it some thought and not completely against that character.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at that point, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, is this book club going to become a major, like, component of the movie from here on in? Because I think that would have been too much. It would have been, like, too much self-referentialism and stuff. But it was just really the one scene, and from then on, it was never really turned up again. So I was okay with it.
I might as well mention the scene that I thought made this not quite, well, I actually do think it's a perfect film, but except for one particular scene, and that scene is in the middle. Jennifer Connelly, who plays Patrick Wilson's wife, she's not a major player in the movie, but she's a documentary filmmaker, and at one point in the movie, they cut to her editing this documentary, and in the documentary, they show about a 35-second clip of this little kid talking about how his mother or father or somebody died in the war in Iraq. And it was just like completely out of left field. I felt like there was this huge movie with commentary on the Iraq war. And, you know, doesn't matter how you feel about the war, it just felt like it just didn't feel like it belonged there at all. It was like this huge smudge. And it was just like Todd Field or I don't know if Parada wrote it in there in the screenplay or if it's in the novel or what, but it's like they just wanted to quickly get in there 30 seconds of commentary for the war, and I thought it was the only part of this whole movie that's really going to make the movie not timeless. Otherwise the whole movie is completely timeless and it'll be perfect all the way through. But for some reason that scene just really bugged me.
It's funny. You made a good joke there. You said it came out of left field. One, because the film was directed by Todd Field, and two, that's very left wing. But I like that scene. I don't love it, and you know, if it disappeared, it wouldn't be a great loss to the movie. Since I really do view this movie as a great post 9/11, you know, snapshot of one aspect of America. You know, like a sociological snapshot. Throwing that in there is the filmmakers giving at least a little bit of a head nod to say, yeah, maybe we feel that way too, and that's why I think that scene exists in there.
Well, I looked at it as almost an extension again of the idea of children being affected by something happening in their lives, and in that case, the extreme of, you know, losing a parent, which is basically, in a way, what happens throughout this movie. The kids temporarily lose a parent. And as far as it being not being timeless, I don't know if I could place if it was the 91 Iraq War or this Iraq War, or down the road maybe a different Iraq War. Who knows? But I do see your point of, like, you know, the kind of just getting the jab in there sort of thing. But I think it almost would have stood out to me more if they had avoided it, like if they had made it a fake war or like a less relevant war now. Like it reminds me of, this might be a little bit of a tangent, but Sean, I know you were reading this at one point, the David Mamet book, Bambi versus Godzilla. And there's a chapter in there where he talks about how using the number 555 in a film is distracting, or using an actor who can playing piano, because you're thinking to yourself, wow, that actor can play piano, rather than, you know, if it was just shot naturally. Then again, on the other hand, if they avoid showing their hands, you'll think, oh wow, that actor can't play piano. But I kind of felt that if it you know, they could have used a different example of a kid losing a child, maybe to cancer or something or whatever. But if they are going to do something related to a war, I think that's the war to do right now. It would have stood out for me if it wasn't that.
Sure, I kind of agree with that. I just think that the scene is not even necessary. It doesn't do anything except for what Kurt said about how it's sort of a post 9/11 thing, and I can kind of buy that. But otherwise, I just felt like it was unnecessary clip.
I think it shows that Jennifer Connelly's character is the only one who's sympathetic to a child.
I was just going to say, she's the only one who isn't really despicable when you brought that up. And, like, you know, the only bad quality about her character is she's kind of bossy, I guess, towards her husband. But
well, see, I actually think she's quite a villainous character because she seems to. Again, I guess I come at this from a different angle than you guys, but I found there's a scene early in the film where their kid comes into bed, and she basically shuts her husband out,
right,
for the sake of letting the kid sleep in the bed. When, you know, I don't know, as a parent myself, I don't think the kids should come and sleep in the bed. You can't destroy your marriage for the sake of your kids either. And I found they used Jennifer Connelly as, you know, the other side. I mean, they used the other women in the park as well, but she's to the point where she's emasculated her husband for the sake of her kid too far. So I don't think that she comes off looking like a hero character. And it should also be noted that, you know, she spends a lot of her time at home doing documentary on kids rather than with her own kid on one level as well. But.
All right. Well, I are we kind of wrapping things up here then, guys? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean,
go around the table.
Yeah, I don't have a lot more to say. We can sort of just do a round table summary, I guess.
All right. Well, I'll start. I loved the movie. Definitely. You know, it's too bad I didn't see it when it first came out, but, you know, hey, that's what DVD's for. And, yeah, it's all the movies we've mentioned, you know, the Todd Solondz and the Alexander Payne movies and even American Beauty and stuff like that. If any of that kind of satire kind of stuff appeals to you, that kind of just kind of criticizes, like, American life in some way, with a little bit of humor, but, you know, with characters you care about, then I think, you know, that pretty much is this movie. So definitely check it out.
I was going to wrap up next because I can see when Sean is done wrapping up, but I just lost what I was going to say, so someone else go.
Yeah, I can go. First of all, of all the movies that came out in 2006, other than United 93, I thought this was the best movie. And
that's what I was going to say. I didn't get to see it in 2006, and if I had, it would have been number 2 still to United 93 because that was my number 1. But it would have, I think it would have bumped up over Children of Men.
Oh yeah. This is just slightly. I remember in my review, actually, first of all, it was 5 out of 5 stars. And also, from pretty much like the first 30 seconds of this movie, I was into it. Partly because of the image, and somebody watching the TV, which you don't know who it is necessarily. And then when the narrator kicks in, from then on, I knew that I was going to love this movie. And when I got to the end, I didn't realize how much I was going to love it. And I was absolutely blown away. And yeah, I can see myself coming back to this movie over and over again. Fantastic.
So I've seen the film 4 times, and I mean, when I saw it at Toronto, I had to run home and just write about it immediately because the movie just plants so many seeds in your head. And like Sean said before, the Todd Solondz and just that style of film tends to resonate with me a lot. And I remember I told everyone that I could think of to go and watch this movie, even though it. So I'm a big avid supporter. I've got a little bit of a problem with the Madame Bovary. That's where he starts getting into some of the issues I had with the heavy-handedness of In the Bedroom. But I love the satire of the film, and I love the performances, and I really hope, and it looks like it's certainly the case, that Patrick Wilson, after the Angels in America TV show, and then Hard Candy, and now this, that he gets a profile to continue to, because he's really a standout I mean, you expect Jennifer Connelly, you expect Kate Winslet, but he really is a standout with his character, with the skateboarders and the football, and his character is maybe one of the most complicated ones in the entire film. And it's not a movie that you feel happy after watching, but it does you right into all the different stories that it is one of the great films of the 21st century so far.
Okay, so next show, and we're hoping this is going to be a monthly thing, right? We were talking about doing Gimme Shelter, which is the Rolling Stones concert documentary. And what was the other film now?
Duck You Sucker, a.k.a. Fistful of Dynamite.
Right.
The Sergio Leone very late spaghetti western, which stars James Coburn and Rod Steiger.
I'm kind of excited too because I haven't seen either of those, so it kind of gives me something to do over the next month.
You're gonna enjoy Gimme Shelter.
Yeah, I bet.
If you liked Woodstock and whatnot, the Monterey Pop Festival documentary, you're gonna like it.
The dark, mean, the 60s are over, man conclusion to that particular trilogy.
So we hope that we'll give you guys a month. You guys can go out, watch the movies, come back and join us for another edition of the Movie Club. And I guess we'll see where it goes from here. But
any feedback on the actual show, any suggestions for movies maybe, and technical feedback as well would be much appreciated.
And I should say that I actually have Marina from Mad About Movies is pinging me right now, coming in a little bit late, but hopefully it won't just be 4 early 30s guys around the virtual table. Hopefully we can bring some other perspectives into it.
Definitely. So
okay, well, guys, thanks. It's been fun for me. I'm looking forward to next month for sure.
And we should say this is the first time we've talked ever. Well,
right, yeah.
At least with Andrew, Kurt, we kind of talked it. But yeah, I mean, I think this is great. We've all got wonderful chemistry together. We're all charismatic men.
Okay, so thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Movie Club.